WIXY.
Good morning and welcome to WIXY1260 Online. I'm Tony Z. On December 11th, 1965, WDOK AM 1260 became WIXY1260 AM in Cleveland, Ohio. Today, 55 years later, WIXY1260 Online honors the past by celebrating the birthday of the little 5,000-watt radio station that rocked the Cleveland airwaves until July 1976.
And now, a WIXY 1260 special presentation.
Celebrating 55 years of WIXY 1260.
The year 1965.
Good morning. This is radio station WIXY in Cleveland, Ohio. WIXY operates with 5,000 watts of power on 1,260 kilocycles and is authorized by the Federal Communications Commission. WIXY is owned and operated by Westchester Corporation. Our offices at 3940 Euclid Avenue in downtown Cleveland. Our transmitter site at 1935 Rockside Road, Seven Hills, Ohio, 44131. Now, before the Al Gates program, here is a thought for the day.
WIXY, Cleveland.
Now, in our 10th year, this is WIXY 1260 Online with guest DJ, the Duker, Larry Morrow.
WIXY Radio, another music hour.
Sound great, of course, Marvin Gaye and Can I Get a Witness? That was my theme song at CKLW before I came to WIXY 1260. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm the Duker, Larry Morrow. Ain't nothing cooking but the peas in the pot, and they wouldn't be cooking if the water wasn't hot, so let's get it. All right, now there's a special guest coming on soon. I have no idea who it is. But following that, it will be Jim LaBarbera. And, of course, Jim LaBarbera was a fixture at WIXY 1260 for a while. And then coming up around 10:45, we're going to talk to Linda Scott. That name may not mean anything to you, but Linda Scott was our promotion director, and she created the biggest and most popular promotion that WIXY 1260 ever did, and that was when they sent me to Vietnam. And that is a great, great promotion. So now I'm going to tell you a little story. Before I came to WIXY 1260, I was working, of course, at CKLW as the Duker. And I'm doing a record hop, and I've got about 500 kids out there. And this guy who was about 16 or 17 years old came to me, and he said, I play the piano and I play the guitar. And he said, would you take a few minutes to listen to me? And I said, sure, let me play a song and then set up your piano and your guitar, and I'll come over and listen to you. Well, I did. I listened to him. He played guitar for a second and played the piano, and I said, you know what, you're so good. Why don't I do this? I'll play for 30 minutes. I'll play the records, and then I'll bring you on for 30 minutes. Now, I'm going to get paid $50 for tonight. So I'll split my fee with you because that's how good I thought he was. His name was Bob Seger. So that made me feel good. Now, when Bob Seger, well, I'll tell the story in a minute, but let's play Bob Seger, his very first song, Ramblin' Gamblin' Man, right here on WIXY 1260. Bob Seger, Ramblin' Gamblin' Man here on WIXY 1260 Online. Hi, I'm the Duker, Larry Morrow. I got to tell you the rest of that story. So now, after I gave myself credit for discovering Bob Seger in Detroit. So now Bob Seger comes to Cleveland, and he has a big hit. This is a big hit already. And he's performing at Public Hall with 10,000 people. And the Belkin and WIXY 1260 brought Bob Seger to town. And Bob had asked that I introduce him. Now, you know that we split $50 during the time that I would do the record hop. I give 25 to him, and then I would keep 25. So now I get on microphone to introduce Bob Seger, and I said, I'm going to tell you a little story, and I told that story about splitting the $50. So I said, Bob, look, I have no idea on how much you're going to make tonight, but I know that it's going to be more than $50. Are you going to split it with me? He said, no, I'm going to give you your 25, and then I'm going to keep the rest. So that's a great story about Bob Seger. Now, there is someone on the line right now. I have no idea who it is. I've been told that it's a surprise guest. So whoever you are, who are you?
Well, he's sitting next to me, but my name is Sammy.
No. Oh, I know. It's my roommate from the very first radio station I ever had, Bill Hennis, my main man. You're not allowed to tell. Bill, you're not allowed to tell that story. You know that.
Oh, no, I'm not telling the story. I just thought I'd come on like that and shake you up a little bit.
Yes.
I just added up the years here as while I was waiting for you when we met in Jackson, Michigan.
Yep.
53 years ago, brother.
Oh my.
You were the big night jock over on the WKHN, which was in Jackson, Michigan, and it was a MOR, middle of the road station, and I was the top 40 rock and roller Wild Willie at WIBM in Jackson. That's how far we go back.
And Bill and I, here's a great story. I went on the air from 6 until midnight. No, 1 o'clock in the morning. Then I have to sign off the radio station. And then Bill got off at midnight, and they would come over, wait for me to get off, and then we'd go to breakfast and spend the next 2 or 3 hours talking radio. Do you want to tell the story? Do you want to tell the story or me?
Well, I can tell it.
Why don't you tell it since you almost got me fired? Tell the story.
Well, what happened is I would come over and I'd just kind of putz around, listen to albums or do different stuff in the production studio over at his station at KHM in Jackson for that hour or 45 minutes when I got there, I guess, until he got off. And he always did a sign-off newscast. And Larry was always trying to play it straight and do a good job, and I was always trying to have fun and goof around a little bit. So one day, I'm trying to explain this so the listeners will understand. In those days, the turntables that you played recordings on were huge, 16 inches around. And there was also a large trash can in those days in the studio. This is the story you want me to tell, right, Larry?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm, and the news would come off the teletype, and it would pile up all day long. So it was a huge trash can, but it fit exactly on the turntable. And Larry is doing the news, and here's the news from Vietnam in a very radio-type deep voice, and trying to be as cool and straight as possible. Meanwhile, I set this trash can up on top of this large turntable, and you could turn it on as low, I believe, as 33 1/3, as I recall, which was a very slow turn. And there was nothing in the trash can. The trash cans had been empty. So I get up on a chair next to Larry. He's on the air. I'm next to him, and I start to urinate this trash can, and it starts to make noise, obviously, and Larry sees it out of his eye, and you tell me, you go on with the rest of the story. What happened Larry?
The rest of the story, it's the funniest story.
I mean,
think
we
that,
were crazy.
Yes, that it was maybe the funniest story ever that happened to me in radio, but the turntable is going around, and I can see it to the left of the microphone. And then I can hear what's going on in the trash can, and I start to laugh. And I couldn't stop laughing during the news. So now the news is over, and I sign off, and I say, this is WKHM AM radio in Jackson, Michigan, signing off. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. The moment I signed off, the private line rings. And the general manager gets on the phone, and he said, Larry, he said, I have no idea what caused you to laugh, but I never, ever want to hear that again. Do you understand? I said, yes. Message sent, message received. So you did your best.
Again,
you did.
And if it ever happens again, don't bother coming to work.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's what it was. If you laugh again, don't bother. And then, of course, Bill and I went out and had our normal breakfast.
We went to that when I opened up here, when I said, hi, this is Sammy.
Yes, oh no.
We went to the Regent Cafe every morning for breakfast, and
Yep.
she was our waitress, and that's the tie-in to Sammy.
Yep, that's right. And she, for the most part, she was our girlfriend. Bill and I shared a girlfriend for the year that I was there.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true, and we lived together too.
Yep,
We lived
and then
together.
and then Bill and I became roommates, and the rest is history. And then we have been best friends ever since then.
Forever.
And we
Absolutely.
speak about every 3 months. And there was a reunion of the Detroit DJs in Detroit within the last year, and I went to the reunion.
Yep.
And I had dinner with Bill. No, I saw Bill. We stayed at the same hotel. And then the next morning.
Well, yeah, I was. You were checking in, and I look up, and you look at me, and I look at you, and I hadn't seen you.
Yep.
And so we wound up. You had something going that evening, and you wound up going out to dinner with somebody, and then we had breakfast the following morning. My wife Rosanne and you and I.
One of the highlights of my life. No, I'm serious, Bill. You know that.
Oh, it was great.
So, Bill, tell everyone what you're doing. I mean, you are, I could give you a title of Mr. Radio, but nobody knows more about contemporary radio in America today than Bill Hennis. So tell our audience, Bill, what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, what I'm doing is I am doing some consulting with radio. I'm doing some consulting with internet stations, and I have 3 internet stations of my own.
Mm-hmm.
That are 24 hours a day, and the name of the company is Today's Hottest Hits.
Mm-hmm.
And one is Top 40, Today's Hottest Hits, and you can get them at todayshottesthits.com. And then I have a country station, which is Today's Hottest Country Hits, and then I have Today's Hottest Hip Hop Hits. So I manage those stations. I do some consulting on stations. And I work with other consultants doing project basis. And so I'm still involved in today's contemporary radio.
Yes, you are. And nobody better.
Well, God bless you. Thank you for saying that.
All right. Well, Bill,
I always try to, when I work with a radio station, I always try to embrace everybody on the staff. So they all work together. And one of my rules when I consult a station is that I have each jock must listen to probably the last hour, part of the last hour of the jock that he or she's going to replace, and come in and compliment them on something that they heard that they like.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a family. Because particularly today, in the old days, everybody kind of lived in the same town. They weren't far away. Today, everybody lives in different suburbs and all of that. You know, somebody might live in Shaker Heights and somebody might live somewhere else in Cleveland or wherever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to get the togetherness of radio that used to be. So, but that's what I do. And I just go in and I use Logic and find the songs that particular station needs. And whether it's an oldies station, I've done classic. I programmed classic rock stations, classic hit stations, country, top 40. I'm pretty well known for top 40 and country as my as my base, but I have done it all. I love the business. The business is still fun to me.
Well,
and it's so good to talk to you, Duker.
Well, not only did Bill and I work in Jackson, Michigan together, but then I left and went to a bigger market, which was Flint, Michigan. And then guess who followed me there? Bill Hennis. And then
I'm guilty.
And then when Bill got married, I was best man at his wedding. Bill, I'm going to move on, brother, but you
got other people.
Yeah.
And I am so glad that I was your surprise guest here, because I've been waiting for this. I knew about this I guess maybe about 3 weeks ago. They asked me,
mm-hmm.
and I am so proud of how you became and how what you became and what you've done in the Cleveland market. There's one other brief story, if you got time for me to do about a 30-second story.
Oh, yes, you bet.
All right. Joey Reynolds was working at WIXY 1260 on the radio dial.
Yes. Another famous name in radio.
Oh, very, very much famous in all radio. And Joey was hired by Lee Allen, who was the program director at WXYZ, which was called WIXY in Detroit, to come in and do nights. And I came down to audition for his replacement job at WIXY Radio and to do the night show. And when I was in the audition, when I was talking to the three owners, all of a sudden they said to me, okay, Wild Willie, be funny. I looked at them, and what I should have done is really tell them how funny they were, but I didn't. I just said, I don't operate that way. I operate when I'm on the air. I'm funny and I'm going and I'm quick and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, the bottom line of that story is I did not get that job. Instead, they hired a fabulous jock, Jack Armstrong.
Yep. That's right.
So that's the story. That's the story of why I never got to work at WIXY 1260 in Cleveland. And I always wanted to do that. But anyway, I went on to other things and programmed CKLW in Detroit and other things. So anyway, I'm off the phone. Let you get on to your other guests, and thank you. And I love WIXY 1260 Online.
Oh,
it's really a cool concept and a cool station. Great to talk to you, Larry.
They've worked hard. The moment you get off, you walk up to your darling bride and say, "That's from Larry," okay?
I will.
Thanks, Bill.
You've always wanted to do that. I knew it.
Thanks, Bill. I love you, man. See you later.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
God bless you, man.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Let's continue here on WIXY 1260. I have a wonderful story about this guy, but he was a wonderful talent from California. He had a song that didn't do well on his first song, but he came to our WIXY 1260 Appreciation Day, and I'll tell that story in a minute. But here now is Neil Diamond and Cherry Cherry on WIXY 1260. That is Neil Diamond here on WIXY 1260. Good morning, I'm the Duker. It's so nice to be here, and we have a very special guest coming up in a minute from right now, but I need to tell this Neil Diamond story. After WIXY 1260 had grown, we were maybe a year and a half old. Norm Wayne, Joe Zingali, and Bob Weiss, who were the owners of WIXY 1260, came together and said, let's have our first WIXY Appreciation Day, which we did. And we had it at a famous, I know where it was. It was called Chippewa Lake. So we had it at Chippewa Lake, and we had several well-known performers, and then including a relatively new guy by the name of Neil Diamond. And again, Neil Diamond had a West Coast hit, and Cherry Cherry had not been out yet. It actually had just come out, but it wasn't a big hit. And all of a sudden, Norm Wayne said, "Oh my God, somebody's got to go pick up Neil Diamond. He's at the airport." And so they went around and they said, "Anybody have a wagon or whatever?" That was one of those long cars. And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Well, then, Duker, you have to go pick up Neil Diamond." So I go out to the airport and I pick up Neil Diamond. And again, in those days, they carry their instruments with them. So we took the drum set, we hooked it on top of my car. Neil Diamond sat next to me with his guitar in his lap, and the rest of the guys, sat in the other seats. Neil Diamond never forgot that story, and of course I had become very close friends with Neil Diamond for about the first half a dozen years. And then when he made the movie, after he became a movie star along with that, I sort of lost contact with him. But I would love to make contact with him again, because whenever he would come into town to perform, he would say, "Make sure that Larry Morrow introduces me." So those were great stories with Neil Diamond. On the other end of my line is one of my dearest friends in the world. You're going to hear me say that a lot, folks, because I really am with these guys. The one and only Jim LaBarbera. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, good morning, Larry. I can't believe, are we talking 50 years, 50-plus years? Man alive.
Yeah, the one thing that I resent about you is that I came to Cleveland on September the 23rd, And that was a week after the Beatles had performed in Cleveland. So I never got a chance to meet the Beatles ever in my career, but you did, didn't you?
Yeah, now I met them, though, in Pittsburgh when I was Jay Bentley's star in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's when I had a chance to spend time with them. Now I got to WIXY. I'm probably the only person, the only WIXY jock that's there under two different names. And I was hired at two different times because there was a guy who came by the radio station when I was in Erie, a little radio station there, and he was an engineer at WDOK. And he said to me, we had a couple of drinks. He said, they're going to go top 40. He said, I think that's what they're going to do. He said, give me a tape and I'll take it back to them. And then about 4 or 5 months later, this was in '65, they went top 40. So they had my tape. Now, Bobby, Jerry Spinn was the program director, and Joey Reynolds, the great Joey Reynolds, was doing nights, and he took a job at XYZ in Detroit. So he was leaving. Jerry Spinn, the program director, has my tape. He calls me in Erie and says, can you come in and do the early evening show? I can't promise you a job, but I want to hear you. And I got real excited. I said, yeah, well, absolutely. But then I said, well, you know what? I'm doing the afternoon show here. I can't do that. Can you put me on late at night? He said, yeah. So what he did was he had Bobby Magic doing the all-night show, moved him to early nights, and I came in. So I only worked there 3 days under Jay Bentley's star. Ray Otis was the morning man for 2 of those days. Great jock from St. Louis and had worked at HK in Cleveland before. So he was there for 2 days. Left after the second day, left a nasty note, Larry, on the wall for management to see. And then Howie Lund did the show the third day. And the first night I'm there, Bobby Magic were broadcasting from the tower. Bobby Magic on, Parma up on the hill. So Bobby Magic is there. He's got a wastepaper basket on his head, and he's screaming into the microphone with this echo. And he said, I got to go. He had to meet somebody. And he doesn't show me how to run the board, just shows me the basics. And he's gone.
Oh, my.
So Jerry Spinn, I never talked to Jerry Spinn. He hadn't heard me. So the third day after my show, I wrecked my car coming back to back to Erie. And I called him and left a message. I said, I can't work, but I'll be available for the weekend. I've just taken 1 day off. And he called me back. He just chewed me out like crazy, just screamed and yelled at me. So later, Steve Popovich, a record guy from, I'm talking too much, I think. Huh?
No, please. No, that's a great story. And Steve Popovich was one of the very first people I met when I came to Cleveland.
Well, he was a local guy for Mercury Records at the time, and he came into Erie, serviced Erie, and I was the music director. And I said, don't tell anybody, I was on WIXY. He said, I didn't hear you. He said, but Jim Gallant isn't happy over at WKYC, and you want to talk to there's no program director now, talk to the general manager, Bob Martin. I called Bob Martin, and 2 weeks later, Bob Martin hires me to go in to WKYC. So that's how I got into KYC. This is early in 1966. So I'm on WKYC for a couple of years on KYC. And then there's a big change at KYC, and I get fired. Well, my girlfriend was a girl named Susan Meek, beautiful girl, and she worked at Wise Advertising with Kathy Brewer. Well, Kathy's husband was George Brewer, the program director of WIXY. And WIXY's all-night man, this was in probably maybe April of 1968 now, and WIXY's all-night guy was going to St. Louis to work the evening shift, and there was an opening. So he was reluctant to hire me because one of the owners apparently thought that I reneged on going to work at WIXY earlier. Jerry Spinn didn't tell him the whole story. So they were a little reluctant, but then I got hired within 2 months of leaving KYC, and I was on WIXY. So that's how I got to WIXY. And then at WIXY, by that, when I came into Cleveland, I was Jay Bentley's star, and Bob Martin, my first name on the air, said, hey, you've made it. You're in Cleveland now. Use your real name. And I had never used I was scared. I had never used my real name, Jim LaBarbera, and that was the first time using my real name. So that's how I got to WIXY 2 times.
Well, you arrived at WIXY before I did, and I came 6 months after we were on the air. Actually, about 7 months. But this is a great story. I don't anymore, but for the longest period of time, Jim, You and Susan Meek, who was a gorgeous person, could have been Miss America, your girlfriend at the time, Chuck Knapp and his wife, and my wife and myself, we had a picture taken. And we all wore the same kind of clothes. I don't know whether you remember that picture or not. But
I sure do. Yeah.
Do you have it? Do you have it?
I still have that. Yeah, I have it.
Oh,
I had a bunch of newspaper clippings, and I saved that. Oh. And we were at the Contiki. It was a May Company simpatico fashion show.
At the Contiki, you're absolutely right. Right below Stouffer's Inn on the square.
Yeah, and that was it. And I was James Cross. Somebody, and I think it was in the press. The Cleveland Press had the pictures, and they had pictures of us, and they said something about supermen with their Lois Lanes. The supermen with their Lois Lanes.
The one thing I still remember about that picture is that what was in those days were bell bottoms.
Yep.
The pants would come down tight to your knee, and then from the knee on down to your ankle, it would flare out, and that was it. And those were wonderful, wonderful stories. And that's in that picture that I can still remember, but I don't have a copy. And I thought Jim LaBarbera has the only copy in America that goes way back. It goes back to 1967 or 68, I would think. Jim, what year did you come back to WIXY?
Now, WIXY, I was at WIXY in 68 then, too,
68.
like 2 years later. 66 there and then 68.
But
at KY, I did the early night and then I did all night. I bounced back and forth between the two shifts.
And you had a couple of, as I was reminded by our producer here, Tony Z, you had a couple of things that were attached to your name. One of them was that you were the, what was it, Tony? Cleveland's most eligible bachelor. First of all, Cleveland's most eligible bachelor. That was number one, and the other one was music professor. No one knew as much about music as you did. How did that come about, Jim, where all of a sudden you would memorize songs? I could remember bringing up a song and you would say, Larry, that group started in 1958, 4 people, 2 girls, 3 guys, and stuff like that. Where did that kind of gift come from?
You're a musician. You played the guitar when you were a singer. Well, I played trumpet when I was a kid and studied a couple of years as a special student in high school at Carnegie Mellon now in Pittsburgh in music. And I was always interested in the backstory, how the song was written, who did the song. So that's what I did. I mean, I can still tell you stories on rock singers like Sherman Garms was the bass man for Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. Frankie was 13, went to Stitt Junior High School, stuff like that. But sometimes I can't remember my own kids. Well, I can't remember my own children's birthday. But that stuff I remember, which is crazy. But the WIXY story, Norman Wayne, looking back at his life, what a brilliant promotion man, creative ideas. And unlike WKYC, now KYC, we made a lot of money. I'll be honest, we made a lot of money at KYC. And those guys were idols. I idolized Specs Howard, Harry Martin. He did the morning show. Jay Lawrence did the midday show. Jerry G did the afternoon show and had the TV show. And Bill Winters did the night show, and Jim Gallant did the all-night show at that time. Then later Charlie and Harrigan came in. So they had big names, and we boomed out all over. But we didn't play to the Cleveland audience. And then to get something done, I can remember an ad we had in the paper. It was a blank, and they were all excited, the art department, all excited. It was a blank piece of paper in the Plain Dealer, and at the bottom it said WKYC plays more music or something. It was at the very bottom. I said, what is this? They said, well, look at this, how creative it is. It did nothing. And then to get something done at KY with NBC, you had to go to, the chain of command with the network. But WIXY, Norman Wayne just, boom, an idea came up, let's do it today. And the ideas were just looking back over some stuff, because I pulled some stuff up, looking through. I wrote a book and wrote about some of the stories, of course, at WIXY. But we had, like, the poster when Bonnie and Clyde was big. We did a poster, a hang-up poster, that went out. I mean, they were all gone. They're collector's items today.
What?
But in the back of the car, actually in the front seat, but we're leaning up against the seat in this old car. Candy Forst, the promotion girl, is leaning against the car, and she's got like Sock It To Me on the back. She's in a little bikini. And Finan and I are in the back seats with our machine guns, and you're leaning over everybody. You're like the Godfather leaning over everybody.
You're right.
It was just a great pop-up poster.
You know who else was on that
simple
poster?
Thing.
Johnny Michaels was on that poster. I remember the Wild Child was on that poster, and it was done. Yeah. It was done at Severance Center, right by the lake. And you know something? I had the original poster of that, which was like 3.5 feet long, 2.5 feet wide. And when, of course, our promotion director at that time was Candy Force, that was her idea. And when I wrote my book, Candy came in town because her family still lived in Painesville. When she came into town, Jim, I said, Candy, will you help me put some of the promotion pieces together for my book? And she said, I'd love to. She started to tell these wonderful stories about that, what you just mentioned. She said, one of my biggest promotions ever was when we did that car. And I said, you know what? I still have the poster. I signed it, and I gave it to her. So now I no longer have it. But the original poster, Jim, she now has hanging on her wall.
Oh, that was such a great poster. And it was fun doing that.
Yes,
you know?
It was.
I can remember Candy had so many great ideas. We had just these little pictures that we had, little glossy pictures, and we went to the zoo to get these pictures taken. So Candy's with me, and I had these bell-bottom trousers and handmade leather shoes. Mm-hmm. And she said, climb over the fence. There was a lion. The lion cage was in the background, the lion with a natural habitat, and like a little gutter, a little moat, you know. And she said, climb over the fence, and they were throwing rocks to get the lion to be positioned behind me. So I'm there on the ledge of this cement ledge that would lead down. If I fell down, I would be into this little moat. And the guy from the zoo came by and said, "What?" You know, very nicely said, come over, get away from there. So I got away from there, and they're throwing rocks trying to get this lion lined up. And he said, what were you going to do? What are you thinking? And I said, well, we're trying to get the lion in back of me. They're going to take the picture. And he said, well, what if you fell down there? I said, oh, that's fine. I just run out to that exit there. He said, you know where it leads to? It leads to the lions, right where the lion is now. And, oh, my God. So we ended up getting the picture of me in the children's zoo next to a donkey.
Now, don't you remember, Jim, because I was with you that day. And I'll tell you the end of that story. I remember that story well. Now, the lion comes over to where we were. Somehow, you must have enticed that lion to come over to the fence. I'm standing by the fence, and Candy Force says, I want to get a picture of you with a lion behind you. The lion turns around so his fanny is facing me, and the next thing I know is that lion urinated on my whole body. I
did not know that.
I got it from the neck on down. And the worst part of that was now we have to spend another couple of hours doing our promotion at the zoo, and I smell like lion urination. But I remember that day well, Jim, and I remember all of us saying, Jim, are you nuts? Get out of that thing.
we had now Norman Wayne. He was brilliant. I remember on my show. One thing he did was he treated everybody equal. So the all-night show was treated just like any other show at the station, which was kind of interesting. Looking back in retrospect, that's what he did. Well, he said to me one day. This is back in September '68. I guess he had been on the Carson show, and there was some publicity. This girl. Francine Gottfried had a 42-inch bust, and she walked on Wall Street, and traffic was jammed up because of this woman. And he said, you know, we're going to do a promotion on your show and talk about it tonight, and we're going to give away sweaters and a trip to New York to the girl who would be better than this. Anything New York can do, Cleveland can do bigger and better. Mm-hmm. And then it was on the whole station. So we go down there, and I was the bachelor. They wanted me to measure the girls, and so we're at East 9th Street and Euclid Avenue in the heart of downtown Cleveland. The promotion was just on our little radio station, and 10,000 guys jammed that whole area. There's a massive traffic jam. Guys are beeping their horns. I'm down there with Kirby. Kirby got down there, and we got on top of a truck, a telephone truck. They put us up there. And, of course, we're bending the hood of the truck, and the guys didn't mind that, though. And we're measuring these girls. And two of these girls, it was Sheila and Suzanne, and they both were 43, 24, 37. And so the police finally get to us, but they're on horseback now. and they're gonna grab us. They're gonna arrest us. Well, King's long gone. King's gone. I'm still with the girls, and Norman pulls up in the limousine. So he's got in his car. So he's got the driver and everybody, and the girls. I help the girls into the car, and the police are now like 20 feet behind us. And Norman locks the door. He won't let me get in the car, and I'm running down the street in the car. So they finally let me in at the radio station. We posed for some pictures with the girls, and I said, Norman, what do you think? And he said, oh, I wanted you to get arrested. He said, this way you could do the show from the jail. Oh, my goodness. But he was always promotion conscious.
You know, speaking of Norm Wayne and that kind of promotion, I didn't want to talk about this, but I'm going to. When I went to Vietnam, and I'm going to talk about that story in a minute with our promotion director who created that promotion, but just before I left for Vietnam to do this promotion, we're going to bring all the boys home from Cleveland from Vietnam for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So now, just before I left, Norm comes up to me, and this reminds me of your story, Jim. He says, you know, it would really be cool if you just got nicked. Like maybe if you fell off a tank or something like that. He said, that would be front page. He said, now, I don't want you to get killed or get hurt really badly, but just a nick. You know, so it would say on the front page of the Plain Dealer, the Duker, Larry Morrow, injured in Vietnam. That was Norm Wayne, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And there was a promotion. The Cream did their last tour, and we had the show. And so the newspaper had our baby pictures in. They had King Kirby, the Wild Child, me, and with Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, and Clapton from the Cream. And then the first 5 people who got everybody matched correctly, then they got tickets to see the Cream, and I guess a VIP pass at the Public Music Hall. Mm-hmm. And then I was going through some stuff that I had, and I found a WIXY family album. So Norman took that idea and had pictures made up in this little folder of Norman Wayne. There's Joe Zangali, Bob Weiss, John Risher. I forgot. Was John a sales manager?
John Risher was just a salesman, along with Cos Capolino and Jim.
Yeah,
Jim and Brazier.
And
yes.
Jimmy.
Yeah, yep.
And then the jocks, all the jocks.
Yeah, all the
Duker,
jocks.
Johnny Michaels, Finan, King Kirby, Wild Child, me. And they you match up the baby pictures with, and I guess this went to agencies.
Yes.
Match them up with the jocks, and then you could win a TV set. So he was always, just so creative. Mm-hmm. And the one of the things that I remember were different shows that we did. I can remember, the high school spirit contest.
Yep.
We went to, what was it? Grand Prize with Lumen Cordium High School.
Lumen Cordium was the very, Jim, you were right. Lumen Cordium was the very first high school that won the WIXY1260 High School Spirit Contest. And I have the picture of all of us, you, me, the Wild Child, Lou King Kirby, all standing on stage. And, of course, Lou King Kirby wore this crown. Remember the crown that he had? He had that crown on his head. Yeah, they turned in millions and millions of votes. And, that was one of the great teenage promotions we ever did.
One of the things before I left Cleveland and come to Cincinnati was the WIXY billboard.
Yep.
And then the billboard, there was a naked lady on a billboard, and you couldn't see much. It was her back. Yes. But we had one on there was one downtown, Carnegie Avenue and East 6th Street. That was like, and then people actually, when it first went up, I can remember cars, there was traffic jams there. People wanted to see the billboard. And my name was on the back shoulder. Around her neck, over around her neck. So that went up, and then there was another one that went up, I guess, that went to the west side. It was like on a strategic location, the West Shoreway, and then there was one that went to the east side. So like 3 billboards. But anyway, WIXY played it up where the West Siders. The East Siders didn't complain about the naked lady, but the West Siders did. So they had to get a bathing suit for the West Sider, and then later a coat. But it was just the brilliant idea with not spending a whole lot of money, these ideas that Norman had that the station went through with. It was just incredible. And, when you and I we can pick up the phone and talk and pick up where we left off. And the ideas that he had, and the camaraderie at the radio station, where there was no competition, I think, between the guys or anything. We all got along, which was very neat.
Yep.
And if you look back on the characters that we had, King Kirby. You know, you had mentioned before. Now he's driving around with a limousine with that long-legged, long-haired driver in the miniskirt who was somebody's daughter at the radio station. And he's got a cape and a crown on, and he stops at Government Square, and he waves to the people and gets back in the car. And people will actually want to go over and see him and talk to him and get his autograph, and he leaves. And every time he'd call me, he'd go, "Hey, this is your king speaking. This is your king." I love the guy. And that was his image. And then you had the Wild Child with that, he had a boa, that snake, Lady Jane. And I can remember, WIXY had a promo where Chief Wacha or something was at Chippewa Lake Park in a pit with poisonous snakes. And he had to be in there for a month to set a world record. And then he would call my show at night. I would have to call him to make sure he was still alive.
You know,
so he did that, and then it was.
Go on,
they were talking about getting Lady Jane with one of his snakes and getting those two together.
One of my best Wild Child stories is my wife wanted to meet the Wild Child. She says, "You know, the guy is really wild." And I said, "Yes, he is." So, and again, our studio was downtown. I mean, not downtown yet. It was in Seven Hills. And so Rosary said, "Come on, let's go down and see Wild Child." So I said, "Let me walk in the studio first. I don't want to bother him. You know, he's a little sensitive about things like that." So I opened the door to the studio, and the Wild Child is sitting there, and the only thing he had on was the headphones. He was doing the show totally nude. and it broke me up, and I told my wife, I said, "You can't go in." He was wild. Well, Jim, look, I'm going to move on and talk to Candy Forrest. Not Candy Forrest, but
great.
Linda Scott.
Yeah.
She was our promotion director who followed Candy, and she tells the wonderful story, the biggest promotion that WIXY ever did. She's going to talk about. So, Jim, I love you, pal.
I'm going to just leave one comment. The most describing all the different jocks that I worked with at WIXY was Duker, Larry Morrow. You were the midday guy. You connected with the audience better than anybody at that time, and you stayed on the air more than 50 years in Cleveland, and I never heard anyone ever say a bad word about you. I mean, you were, and still are, because you're so sincere, and you've been loved by everybody in Cleveland, and it's been a pleasure to be a friend of yours all these years, and thank you for letting me be on the show with you.
Jim, I love you, man. Thank you so much. And we've been great friends from the moment we met, and we still are. So, and it was a wonderful treat to have you come on today. So thank you, pal.
Thank you.
Okay. See you later. All right, let's continue here on WIXY 1260. Speaking of the Wild Child, I will tell the story in a second. But we had a song called The Wild Child Freakout, which I wrote, by the way. And so here it is. Here's the Wild Child with called Get It On. That is the Wild Child, and he was absolutely, as Jim LaBarbera had indicated, he was the wildest thing that we ever had. There was a meeting that Norm Wayne had called. He had invited all the advertising agency people in who represented WIXY 1260. They were in from New York for a meeting. And we were having a meeting in Seven Hills, and it was outside, and it was mandatory that Norm Wayne, Joe Zingali, and Bob Weiss wanted to make sure that we were all there. So we all show up, white shirt, ties, sport coats, and Norm Wayne looked at me and he said, "Where's the Wild Child?" And I said, "I don't know." And I said, "But I can hear a motorcycle coming down this driveway that we had." The driveway was maybe about 100 yards long. And all of a sudden, here comes the Wild Child. And again, we're in white shirt and ties to meet all of the executives from New York who represent WIXY 1260. The Wild Child pulls up in the middle of all of these people, all dressed up. He has nothing but a pair of shorts on. And everyone started to laugh, and Norm Wayne said, "Why didn't you call?" He said, "I didn't have a place to put a dime." And he was about as wild as you could get, but he was wonderful. We all loved him. And Jim LaBarbera talked earlier about the wonderful relationship that we had together. We were never jealous of each other. We all had our own thing. Jim LaBarbera, when I first came to town to start at WIXY, the morning man was Al Gates, and then I came on, and they were 3-hour shifts. Al worked from 6 to 9. I worked from 9 to noon. Luke King Kirby worked from noon to 3. and then Chuck Knapp from 3 to 6, and then the Wild Child, and then Bobby Magic did the all-night show. But it was just a wonderful group of people. And again, as much as we competed with each other, we never competed with each other. Before I came to Cleveland, I heard a song on CKLW, and you got to remember, CKLW was a 50,000 watt radio station, and one of the reasons I ended up coming to Cleveland is that my night show from 7 to midnight, Duke Windsor, was #1 in Cleveland. That's how I ended up coming here. But I fell in love with the group, and I got a hold of a song by the Outsiders, and the song was called "Time Won't Let Me." So, and I'm going to play that in a minute because there's a wonderful history to that. But on the other end of my line is our promotion director, who I love with all of my heart, and her name is Linda Scott. Linda, can you hear me, hon? Are you there?
I'm here. I'm on my cell phone.
Okay. Well, how are you this morning, Linda? Linda's you're in Florida, are you not?
I'm in Florida, yes.
Yeah, you're easy to resent. We're 45 degrees in rain, and you're probably 75 degrees in sunshine, right?
No, actually, there's no sunshine. It's overcast and probably about 70.
Yeah, probably about 70. Yeah, you are easy to resent. Linda, first of all, thank you for coming on. Linda and I have remained great friends over all these wonderful years. Linda, what years were you at WIXY?
I think I was there in the late 60s. I left Cleveland in 72 when I was at Channel 3, and I was there for 18 months. So it was just before that, probably 69, 68.
Now, you created the biggest promotion, the most wonderful promotion, and the most talked about promotion that WIXY1260 ever had. And it was your idea. Can you talk about how that happened piece by piece?
Are you kidding? You think I remember?
Yeah. Well,
you've got to be talking about the Vietnam promotion,
yes,
right? When we sent you to Vietnam?
Yeah, WIXY1260 brings the boys home.
Brings the boys home for Thanksgiving.
And Christmas.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that promotion was created by you and you alone. But I want you to tell the story on how that happened, how you informed me. Do you remember?
Well, I think the thing came to me in a dream, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I think I came into the studio and I said, "Hey, Larry, how do you feel about going to Vietnam for Christmas for the boys, to bring the boys back for Christmas and Thanksgiving?" And you thought I was kidding.
Oh,
Frankly,
yes,
I
did. I thought you were kidding.
I don't think we had a prayer chance to even make it happen. But you were gung-ho. You said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah, my first thought was, and I was kidding when you said, "How would you like to go to Vietnam?" And I said, "I don't think so." And you said, "Well, weren't you a Marine?" And I said, "Yes, I was in the Marines." And you said, "Well, we're going to send you to Vietnam." And you said, we had 200 kids from Cleveland who were in Vietnam, and our goal is to have you go over there, interview every one of them, and then bring those interviews home, and we'll play them on the air on WIXY1260 during Thanksgiving and Christmas. And another idea that you came up with, Linda, was we'll make a cassette of every single interview, and then we'll send it to the parents of the kid that you interviewed. That turned out to be one of the best promotions. Do you remember when you went to Bill Hickey, who was the radio and TV writer for the Plain Dealer at that time, when you met with him and told him about it?
Oh, he was my very, very good buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just about every promotion I came up with, or we came up with at the station, Bill would write about.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great, great guy. I don't know. Do you know if he's still around?
No, he is not, sadly enough.
Yeah, well, it is a long time ago.
They were now, Linda, they were all older than us. So at that time, we were just kids for the most part. We were in our 20s. But anyway, tell some of the stories that you not only created the WIXY1260, Bring the Boys Home from Vietnam. That promotion was created by you. But talk about another promotion that involved military people and other people that also turned out to be a giant promotion for WIXY1260, Linda.
Well, the other thing that we did was, we used to have those concerts where we promoted various groups that would come through the town, would come through Cleveland. And I got a call one day from a young lady from one of the hospitals where the kids that was coming back from Vietnam that were injured or had been hurt in the war and were convalescing at this hospital. And they wanted to know if they could bring some of the kids over to one of our concerts. Well, it turned out that it was impossible for them to be able to come because they were either in wheelchairs or on gurneys. So I got this idea. What if we had a talent show and brought the kids to one of these big halls in Cleveland where they could actually have access for wheelchairs and that kind of thing? So we held auditions for local kids to come and put on a talent show. And that got a lot of publicity. And we put that show on. I think that was one of the most heartwarming promotions we did, and everybody at this station got involved. All the jocks, everybody was involved. And we brought a lot of these young kids in their wheelchairs and on their gurneys, and the local kids who had talent got involved, and it was a beautiful promotion. I remember that. Do you?
Well, Linda, you know what those promotions did? I remember Bill Hickey did not care for WIXY 1260 at all. He just thought we were nothing but a kids' radio station playing rock and roll and a bunch of silly guys on the air. You know, we're jam up, jelly tight, peanut butter right, and ain't nothing cooking but the peas in the pot, and they wouldn't be cooking if the water wasn't hot. And Bill thought that was stupid, silly stuff. So, but when we went to Vietnam and when we did that promotion that you created, the older adults within the community started to recognize WIXY 1260 as more than a kids' radio station because we were touching their hearts, not only their wallet, but we were touching their hearts. And I remember the numbers. Well, you know, the numbers from 12 to 18 were big numbers. We had 80% shares of the audience, if you can remember that. But then all of a sudden, just my last 2 years there, based on those kind of promotions, WIXY 1260 in the 25 to 49 category started to grow like crazy. And we were no longer a kids radio station. And it was because of the genius of people like you and the person who preceded you, Candy Forrest, your pal. WIXY 1260 became what it turned out to be, the most popular radio station in the marketplace for such a long period of time. Now, Linda, what was it like? Talk about your relationship with the guy that we've been talking about all morning, you know, the owner of WIXY 1260 and a guy with great ideas, Norm Wayne. You also did to talk about that because I wanted you to talk about the one promotion with the car. That is hysterical.
Are you talking about the Edsel promotion?
Yes, please.
Well, let me just say this about Norm Wayne. The word genius isn't even big enough to describe his brain and his ability to come up with ideas. That job, and I had a huge, long career in the broadcasting industry, but I have to say that the amount of time I spent at WIXY to this day was the most fun, the most challenging, I never knew what I was going to get into each day that I'd walk through that door because Norm would always have something for me to do that was going to be either outrageous, a major challenge, and turn out to be the most fun of my entire life. And the Edsel promotion was probably one of the most challenging. He got it in his head that we were going to revise the Edsel and turn it into a dealership in downtown Cleveland. And we took over the Ohio Theater, and we turned it into a car dealership. And the challenge was to be able to get one of those Edsels, actually we got 3 Edsels, into the lobby of the Ohio Theater. And I called him up and I said, Norm, I can't get those cars in there because they won't, the big fins, you remember the big fins on the Edsels?
Yes.
Yep. I said, they're not going to be able to come through the door. There's those metal braces there. He said, Linda, go get an electric saw and you make a hole big enough for those fins to get in you. You figure out how to do it because that's got to go.
Oh.
And I had to do it. And those are the kind of challenges that he would set forth for me to do. Mm-hmm. And Carl Stokes, the current mayor, he came down to cut the ribbon. We made Mike Ranieri the general manager of the Edsel dealership, and we actually had an Edsel dealership in that Ohio theater for that night for the Edsel promotion.
Do you know?
And we did it.
You know, Linda, I still remember that well, and I remember Norm Wayne telling you that. We were all there. Of course, Mike had a special role that night, but we were all there, and it was laughable. I thought it was absolutely laughable that Norm said, for the most part, Linda, find a way to get that car through that door or whatever it was. And you said, well, how am I going to do it? And you found a way to get it done and got it done. So nothing was too big.
Yeah, we had 3 cars in the lobby of the Ohio Theater because he said, you have to find a way to do it. And that was usually what he told me every time he gave me a job or gave me an idea to promote, to get the details worked out and done. And that was always my challenge. And I loved it. It was the best job ever.
Yeah, one of my favorite Norm Wayne stories was when I came to WIXY1260, I had come from a very big radio station, CKLW, of course, and I remember making somewhere right around $17,000 or $18,000 then, which was a lot of money at a big radio station in Detroit, a 50,000-watt station. I come to Cleveland to WIXY for $9,000, and I needed a job. All of us, those of us who worked at CKLW, when a new company would buy a radio station, they would bring in their own people, and everyone would be fired. So we were all fired, and I needed a job. So I came to this new market, Cleveland, Ohio. And the only reason I came here to begin with was I needed a job, and I had a picture of Jim Brown, the Browns fullback, on my wall. And I said, oh, this would be fabulous to go to this market. So now I come here, and Norm Wayne was all excited about the fact that he had hired Duke Windsor. Do you remember that story, Linda?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
Yeah, he gets all excited about, I'm hiring Duke Windsor, the Duker, because my night show from CKLW from 7 to midnight was #1 in Cleveland. So now I come to Cleveland. Norm Wayne is out of town for the first 2 weeks of me being on the air. Thank God. And you'll understand why. So again, he hired Duke Windsor, and he's all excited. So now, Jane Scott, the famous writer, the radio TV writer for The Plain Dealer, interviewed me.
And no relationship to me.
Yes, and she said, what is your real name? Duke Windsor can't be your real name. And I said, no, my real name is Larry Morrow. And so she said, well, what are you going to use on the air? And I said, I'm probably going to use my real name because CKLW owns that name, Duke Windsor. So, again, Norm Wayne's out of town. She puts a full page in the action tab. Do you remember how important the action tab was in those days, Linda?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was it. So now I'm on the cover of the action tab, and it said a picture of me holding my guitar, and it said, WIXY1260 makes the Duke theirs, and then under my picture was my name. So the program director, Johnny Canton, says, well, Larry, when you go on the air, we better use your real name because, Jane Scott revealed that. So I go on the air as the Duker, Larry Morrow. So now Norm Wayne is driving back from Pittsburgh after I've been on the air for 2 weeks. And he's all excited about hearing Duke Windsor, his new find that came in from CKLW. And he's listening to him, he's saying, who the hell's Larry Morrow? Who's that? I've never heard that name before. And when he interviewed me, he kept on referring to Duke Windsor, so I was afraid to tell him, that's not my real name, pal. So anyway, I'm on the air as Larry Morrow, the Duker. He didn't walk in the studio. He actually pushed the door in. He pushed the door through, and he yells at me, and he said, who the hell is Larry Morrow? He says, you've ruined the whole promotion. He said, the whole thought of you coming here was because you were Duke Windsor. Now no one knows Larry Morrow. So now the ratings come out about 6 months later, and of course, like all the other jocks, I'm #1 from 9 till noon. And I wrote a little note to Norm Wayne where it said, Larry Morrow, #1. I wrote a note to him that said, Norm Wayne, you no longer have to ask, who the hell is Larry Morrow? So that's my great Norm Wayne story. I have a few more, but that's a great story. So, Linda, thank you, my dear.
Are there other people, other guys there from the station with you today, this morning?
No, there are not. I had Jim LaBarber on earlier, Billy Bass is coming in a few minutes, and he's going to be talking with Chuck Knapp. We tried to reach Lou King Kirby, but we were unable to make contact with him. And, of course, nobody can find the wild child. I hear everything from, he's in jail, that he died, or that whatever he's doing somewhere in the world. But nobody can find him. So that was it.
Well, it's been fun reminiscing with you, as always.
Yes. Linda, we love you. Thank you, my dear. Thank you for not only everything you did at WIXY 1260, but thank you for all the wonderful things you did in my life. And people ask me, of all the promotions that you've done at all the radio stations that you've worked at and in your 50 years in Cleveland, can you single out one promotion? And I said yes. It's the one that Linda Scott came up with, bring the boys home from Vietnam for Thanksgiving and Christmas. That promotion put a mark on me that has lasted all these years, and thanks to you, Linda.
Well, it was my pleasure, and you did a great job, and you put us on the map, and you've always had a spot in my heart. So stay well,
all right.
Be healthy, and thanks for this opportunity. It was fun. I got to go back to baking my cookies.
Thank you, Linda. Love you. We'll be in touch, okay?
Okay, Larry.
Right, bye-bye.
Stay well.
Linda Scott. We had several promotion directors along the way, but the first promotion was Candy Force, and then she left. Linda came in and then made her mark, and you just heard the kinds of things that WIXY did based on her intelligence and her creativity. So now, when I was at CKLW, again, I fell in love. I started to tell this story, and then we ended up with Linda. I fell in love with this group from Cleveland, Ohio, and they were called the Outsiders. And, of course, the song was Time Won't Let Me. And I'll tell the rest of the story right after we listen to the song.
Celebrating 55 years of WIXY 1260.